How do we best price or develop recipes for our wedding florals, especially when we're going to do a proposal and we want to make sure that not only are we going to give the client what they're looking for, but also that we're going to be able to price it so that we're going to be able to make the money that we need to make in order to succeed in our business. I wanted to go over this with you today and show you exactly what you need to do and how I think about it and how I go about pricing and creating designs. So the biggest thing that we do in wedding florals is bridal bouquets. And today this video is going to concentrate on that fully. Let's dive in. So the first type of bouquet most often is a hand-tied. The traditional kind of European hand-tied done in a spiral design. You're designing it in your hands. And so this is the design here that you see on the screen. This jewel tone coloring is a design that was done as a hand-tied. So I'm going to talk to you about here's how the compositions go. Here's what I think about when I'm trying to put things together. A bride has come to you with this image, okay? And you're saying, great, I'm going to do something similar for that for you. So how would you go about doing that? What you're going to do is you look at the design first. You figure out how you're going to create the design. I'm going to show you more designs as we go along, but this one in particular, we're just going to talk about how you do as a hand-tied. As a hand-tied, you're going to look at, okay, what are the flowers that I need? Generally, you're going to have focal flowers. Those are going to be your larger flowers. You're going to have some secondary flowers. And I hate to say secondary, but it's mostly because they are accents to the focal flowers. And sometimes those accents, though, can be more expensive than the focal flower itself. So it's not that they're any less importance, it's more of importance in size. Then you have accent flowers. Some people call them filler flowers. I call them accents. And as well as you're talking about branches and foliages. So both of those are great additions to designs. Now, aside from fresh product, the other things that you have to think about, the hard goods. And is there going to be ribbons? Are you going to put it in a bouquet holder? Is there any type of armature or structure that you're using to help you create this bouquet? How are you going to finish it off? Is it going to need any pins? Are you going to need any floral tape? All of these things will go into the cost of the bouquet and how you're going to build out your recipe. So let's look at the picture. In here, first of all, I'm going to start grouping things and I'm going to write down how many roses there are. We see 1, 2, 3. I see 3 different types of roses. These other blooms that you see here are more of the mauve lisianthus that you can buy now, that chocolatey kind of mauve color. So that would be more of the secondary flowers. Accent flowers would be your hypericum berries. Also, you have the thuringium and you have seeded eucalyptus. We've got Australian fern in here, the sea coral, as well as I'm trying to think, a stilbe is in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at this and counting the flowers that are in here and write them down, or you can put them in a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you a spreadsheet later on that you can use and how you put that together. But first, let's talk about it. So you've got roses in here. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to think about, there's probably some on the back of the bouquet too. So let's add 2 more, 7, 8. And then let's say there's another one tucked down in here, probably 9. So let's go with 9 red roses. Then we have garden roses in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5. And you may even have 6 on the other side. In addition, we also have like a quicksand rose. It could even be Saharas, something that's a little bit smaller than the hybrid rose and the garden rose. Then the Saharas would be a smaller bloom head. And I do think about this when I'm trying to put together a design. What is going to go together well? What will mix well? And only time and doing these again and again are how you're going to start to grow and get the feel of how you like to design. So in here, I'm going to count up how many of the Sahara roses I'm using. And then I will also start counting up. The eryngium has several blooms to one stem. So you can see here that I've separated the blooms out by how I place them in the spiral. And when I place it in a spiral, I will spread them out. So I'm not really going to talk so much about the design today as I am about how you figure out the recipe. So let's say I see at least 2 stems on the front side. Let's say there's another third stem or 4. So you could put 3 or 4 in there as well. I have hypericum berries. You want to count here. It looks like we may have only had 3 or 4. Then I have the scabiosa pods. And let's say I'm grouping these. So when I'm grouping them, I'm doing them in 2s, not in 3s. But most likely I would have done this with 3 sections of these or gone up to 5. Now, so I'm going to count those stems as well. And then I'm going to add in the seeded eucalyptus and the Australian fern here. I know that this type of fern is more of a fingered fern. And so when it goes in, it's going to go in like this, and then I can actually weave it in between the blooms so that I get more out of that. Once you have all of these counted, you're going to put them into a spreadsheet, and I will show you that in just a bit. But before we're done that, I'm going to go over some other bouquet types and talk about how we would do this. When we do a typical hand-tied, I generally charge my time at 30 to 40 or 50% of the actual charges of what the cost would be. So that way, I'm actually charging enough for the labor and my expertise and what I've come to do over the years. What you are going to charge for labor if you're starting out might be different. You might start out at 20%. You might work your way up to 30, 35. But the more labor that's in a design, the more design of the flowers, the higher your labor rate should be. So let's look at another design. Here I have one. Again, this is a typical hand-tied, and it's filled with lilac, the fresh Holland syringa, and I have local syringa here. I have ranunculus in several different types, sweet peas, and I have dusty miller. And so what you're going to see here is that this is a very high-end bouquet. What's more important here is the fact that the flowers are going to be on the more expensive side. They're also a little bit more fragile. So this is going to be a higher end bouquet, just in the fact of the price of the flowers themselves. And you'll also see I have specialty ribbons down below here as well. Now, the next type of bouquet we have is a cascade. And in this design, I used lots of different foliages as well as some white blooms. And in the cascade, you're going to charge a little bit more because you're going to have more labor involved in creating the cascade, especially if you're doing a more traditional one where you're wiring and taping flowers. This one didn't have a very long tail to it, so it wasn't as expensive, but it still had a higher end grouping of flowers with the dendrobium orchid, your freesia, your spray roses. It has rosemary, helix, which is ivy, and you have myrtle in here. And she also had some phlox, and I used a couple of garden roses as well as hybrid roses. Now, let's look at this bouquet. This bouquet, again, was more of a heavily designed bouquet. I had a jeweled tiara that went around the outside, and it was completely wired underneath to be able to wire and attach to the bouquet. And then the bouquet is designed in a European bouquet holder style where it's really paved, except for some of the other flowers that I have coming out, with the cascade of it going into the callas out here and the uluhe of the monkey tails as well as I have Passiflora vine in here wrapping around. So this one has a lot going on in it, but it also had a lot more design wise and would be considered more in that higher range, like the 40% range for me for labor. Here's a detail on that, and you can see underneath here where I added in, and you can see all of that was wired, and the underneath of the bouquet holder itself actually had leaves. So I paved the leaves and layered the leaves on the back side of the bouquet. So there's a lot more intricate work done on this, and you can see I have a cushioned handle that I've created. Since there are no stems from the handle, I had to create the handle on it. Here again, this is one of those hand wired and taped bouquets. So this again would be one of those bouquets. You can see all of these dendrobium blooms have been individually wired. This would be something that you're actually going to think about when you're doing it. A dendrobium spray, the actual stem, has at least, generally a nice stem, would have at least 4 good blooms, really open blooms, and then you start to go to the buds mid stage and then bud stage. So in order for me to figure out what I wanted to do with this bouquet, it doesn't have a lot of product, but it does have a lot of labor. So for this bouquet, what I'm going to be doing is doing more of like a 50% labor and on top of whatever the cost of the floral is. So in this bouquet, all I have is variegated lily grass, and I also have the dendrobium sprays. So on here, if I was looking at this and I hadn't done this bouquet before, I would be counting up blooms, adding a little bit more for what might be on the other side that I don't see, as well as then dividing that by 4, saying, okay, I think on average I could get about 4 good blooms off of each stem that I buy. So then I would divide that up and I would then place the order based on that. Okay. Then, another thing to take into consideration is if you do an intricate handle. This bouquet, the bride had wanted wire accents, and I added the pins just to make it something that was special for her. And then in this particular design, again, this was a specific design created for the bride to kind of go along with her gown that she had. She had a seafoam green, beautiful gown. It was raw silk. And so I designed something that was more in a form. And then I did the handmade handle as well. And I also created the bouquet in that crescent shape. So again, this is more of a high labor design, and there's a value to that because you're doing something that's custom. So I hope that helps. The next thing we're going to do is dive into how do you price these out? Okay, now let's dive into how to build out the recipe. And we're going to use that first jewel-toned bouquet as our sample for today to build this recipe for the bridal bouquet. I am in my floral recipe template that I offer in the Floral Business Academy. If you want to learn more about that, you're welcome to it. You can check the link down below. But what this does in this template, this is what I used for so long before I found some software that I like to use. And one of my favorite software tools right now is True Client Pro. And I will also add a link to that down below as well. Okay? Basically, within this template, I have the welcome page. I have instructions and how to use things. There's the recipe template, which is what we're going to focus on today. There's also the area where you enter your flowers, you enter the wholesale price, and then it's going to do the markup price, the retail price for you. Same thing goes for the foliage. Anything that you have in foliage, you can add it here and it will enter it. Then you have the hard goods. Any of your hard goods that you're going to use in your events, you enter this into the template and it will stay there for you. The last one that I have as far as what you can enter into the template is recipes like rentals and fees. So for instance, labor, I have in here at $100 an hour. You can put additional labor charges in. So if I wanted to add a lesser amount of labor, the charge would be, what I want to think about is 30%. So how much are you charging for yourself per hour for design? And if you're just starting out, then that number is probably going to be a little bit lower. As you go and as you get more experience and you grow your business, you can add more and more for the percentage of labor. So let's go ahead and put in here $30 an hour at this time. Okay? Then it's just going to go ahead over and populate here. Now when you go in and add your recipe, you're going to either be able to click for labor or labor at 30%. You can add as many different charges in here as you would like. I always base this on a per hour basis, and you'll understand why when we build out the recipe. Then you have lists here, and this is everything that you have in the lists. Every category is in here. It's all within this one list. Also here you can see on the inventory types, it also has the markup. You can change these at any time. I have it at 3.5. For flowers, foliage, I have it 2.5. Hard goods, I have a 2-time markup. And rentals and fees, it's just whatever the rental and fee is in there, that's what gets put in. Now I also have here an event order template. So if you wanted to just put together all of the orders, let's say, and you wanted to see what it would cost for an entire wedding, you would be able to enter in each one of the arrangements that you need in here and be able to calculate. It would give you a basic total of the whole amount. All right. This page here in the sheet is so if you're going to get ready to do the order, you can do it by the whole entire order. It will give you a list for the event, and it will put through all of the amounts that you need for each item. So let's say for this event, it's sample event number 2. It has equisetum. We know that we're going to need at least 1.875, and it tells us where it's located. Like, is it in the guest tables? Is it in the premium guest tables? And how many stems you'll need. Okay? But let's go back. We're going to concentrate on the recipe template section today. I've gone ahead here and named the bouquet that we're going to use as Jewel Tone Bouquet. And so in this bouquet, what you're going to see is I'm going to put in the flowers first, and then I'm going to go in and add the foliages on the hard goods, and then last we're going to end with the labor. So what's going to happen here is we're going to be able to put in this order here, and I can put it in edit mode. See how it's in edit mode right now, which means that I'll be able to do all of these, and when I'm done, you follow this, you edit the recipe, then you check the box here and click update. It's going to update your bouquet recipe for the whole thing. Let's get started. Okay, so we have in here red roses, and we knew that we said that we had wanted to do, let's see here, you can put notes in here if you'd like, but for instance, I know that we had 9 roses in this one that we were going to calculate. Okay, and then next one was garden roses, right? So you can start typing garden roses. What I've done here is I've gone in ahead of time and added the flowers, the foliage, and the hard goods. Once you've done this once for any flower or any hard good, it's going to already be in those lists that you have down below in the different tabs of the sheet. Okay, so garden roses, deep pink, and we wanted to have 6 of them. And then we go to the Sahara rose. So I have rose in here and I have Sahara, and we added 6 of those as well. And we had Eryngium, right? So we're going to add Supernova, and I said 4 stems. Then we have Hypericum, and I had a dark red, and those were about 4 stems as well. We also had the Scabiosa pods, and we had those in clustered groupings. So let's say there's 6. And we also have, let's see, we had in the foliage, we had seeded eucalyptus. So I'm going to go here now and I'm going to put in foliage, and it's going to move it over to what is in that list, right? So eucalyptus seeded, and let's say we divided up about 3 stems. And then we have also the fern, and the Australian fern. And let's say I put in 4 of those. And what is happening here is it's bringing over your retail price of the flowers, because you're calculating your wholesale price on the other part of the list. So what's happening here is we're getting what the retail price would be. And also you'll see, this is the way I set up my flowers. I always put the family name, and then I put the common name, or if I'm doing a certain variety, I also put, if there's a certain color or something like that, I go ahead and put those in there. Okay. Now, after that, we're going to add hard goods. And on this hand-tied bouquet, there aren't a lot of hard goods, but there are some things that you're going to use. You're going to have tape or a rubber band or something like that you're going to put around the bouquet to keep it together. And then we also have in the picture ribbons. So I'm going to add those in as well. So I'm going to use waterproof tape, green, and let's say I do everything that's in a roll by the yard. So waterproof tape, green, it's 20 cents a yard. I'm just going to put 1 yard, even though I probably won't use that much. But then also for the ribbon, I'm going to add both ribbons. There were 2 ribbon types. Both were a number 9. And I do this by the yard as well. This satin ribbon, let's say we used 1.5 yards of each one. And I had the raw silk. I'm going to put 1.5. There. Okay, so now the price of this bouquet is $215.25 before I've added the labor. So the next thing we're going to do is go to rentals and fees. We're going to type in labor, and most likely, because it's just the spiral, it doesn't take as much labor and it's not the higher price. So you're going to put in the 30%. We're going to say, okay, maybe it's going to take you an hour to do all of it, especially if you aren't used to doing spiral bouquets, hand-tieds, then you're going to put in for an hour. And this is your price, $245.25. You can see it right here. So this helps calculate the price, which is so helpful for trying to put together a recipe. So do you see how it works when you're trying to make sure that you have the stem counts? You're starting to visualize how you put something together, and then you're going to put it in and make sure you're covering all of your costs. So I hope you found this helpful today. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me at info@christylopez.com, or you can click subscribe to watch more videos like we had today. And if you liked what I taught you today, this is just a small snippet of what I do inside my wedding sales system program. You can find out more at christylopez.com.